You first. How I don't know.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I was wrong about how much time we had left because I was looking at the wrong video. That's okay. Bent, we're live.
All right, cool.
All right. First, I want to say thank you to Terrador's Final Form for becoming a member at the Amnio level. That was earlier today at around noon 30 my time. Then Lieutenant Matt the Navigator just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships, so let's take 5 drinks for that after I realize that I didn't get the drink counter ready, which means we're going to take a 6th drink for Dapper is a professional because, yeah, that's a thing that I forgot to do. So first, let's take some drinks. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I am drinking some apple cider. It is hard for you Americans out there for whom apple cider does not imply alcohol. Bent, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Mountain Dew Baja Blast.
Nice. All right, so this is Bent. Oh wait, no, we got Terrador's Final Form, who's been a member. Sorry, for 36 months. I guess it was a renewed membership from earlier. Hot Tamales Batman. This guy's a bigger joke than Arthur Fleck. Thank you very much. All right, so we are here for Kent with Bent. So Bent, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
It has been. It's been a day. I'll say that. So, for those of you who don't know, I put out a video for early access today. But that started with me having to reconstruct my edit of the original video because for some reason, Blender decided that the first more than half, basically it just decided to take all my cuts, but slide the timestamps in one direction, such that most of the segments I had were just blank and silent. And then, well past the halfway mark, they kicked in, but at the beginning of the video, which isn't what those should have been, so I had to come in, import a new version of the same video file, and then reconstruct all those edits based on like, well, this edit here that I had originally is about this long, and it looks like that much dialogue fits into it. So then I look at my script, and I listen to the dialogue, and I'm like, okay, does that make sense as a response to what the video just said? Yes, okay, then I'll make the cut there, put it into my timeline, and then edit my video response section back into there, and then go back to the original video edit and try to find the second bit of cuts. So yeah, it took a lot longer than normal, and I had to do a lot more extra work on top of that, and I'm still not done because there are still clips that are not so fixed for the next time because I had already started on the script for the second part. And so yeah, I still have to do that. And then I spent a good long while trying to figure out why Mass Effect was not playing in-game audio on Vishanti's computer, which we failed to do. And as far as I know, she's currently playing Mass Effect 1 with no audio. So, hey, if you have any thoughts on how to get audio to start playing again, because it was playing last night, maybe, I don't know, make some suggestions. Because both Vishanti and I spent like over an hour not that long ago trying to find fixes, doing all sorts of things, checking voice meter, changing the bit rate on speakers, like refreshing, deleting game files, restoring game files, checking the integrity of game files. So yeah, if you have any ideas on that, let me know, because I sure don't. And I'm pretty sure Vishanti would much rather play Mass Effect with sound rather than without sound, if, you know, the option were there. But hey, Goopdo3 for 149 sent a ice cream cone super sticker. Thank you very much. And then Lieutenant Matt the Navigator with our first super chat for the goal says, any cider can be hard cider if it's sufficiently low temperatures. Accurate. Team O&B's Wolfly Dogmatic Chronotastic Centrism has joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Thank you very much. So let me add in the number. All right. So before we get going, I do want to say we do have stream goals, the normal ones, fancy avatar, and Bent wears a tutu since this is again with Bent. So if we get to 100%, Bent will have to don this tutu that I have to don because last time we went live, you guys exceeded you doubled the fancy avatar number, basically. But to help with that, I also am running still the GoFundMe for my new computer. I plan to shut it down tomorrow or maybe the next day, depending on how lazy I am, basically after my stream. So tomorrow's stream is going to be the last day that I'm going to be pushing the fundraiser, really, because at that point, either it will be enough for me to basically just get a computer just with that money, or I don't expect any more money to come in. So either way, there's not much point in continuing on with it. I did miss your membership chat, Roshna. Roshna, hashtag Upset Keller, who's been a member for 20 months, says apple cider or Baja Blast is greater. I would say normally I would be more inclined to drink Baja Blast, but today I didn't. I wanted apple cider. I wanted a bit of a change. And then
I'm voting
Terrador's...
for Baja Blast.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Terrador's final form for 500 Argentinian peso says, for some reason my Bible automatically opens at Isaiah 56:12 every time Kent with Bent starts. You're going to have to remind me what Isaiah 56:12 is because I do not know off the top of my... Alright, so... the link to the GoFundMe is listed in the pinned chat here in chat, and donations there do in fact get a 20% boost on top of what they normally have. So I see that we actually did just get a donation, so I want to say thank you to Sean for donating $25. Thank you very much. All right, so for those of you who might not be familiar with the show or how this works, it is a bit of a drinking show. We have a drinking counter up there. It currently says 6. And so before we actually get into the rules on drinking, this thing is getting in my way. I want to say, first, if you want to play along, but you do not feel comfortable drinking, or you just don't want to, or for any reason you would rather not have alcohol, that is absolutely fine. There is zero expectation that you play along with alcohol, right? I'm doing with alcohol because I think that's... I think it's fun for the chat to watch me slowly drown my sorrows in amounts of alcohol. I've got my nice Klingon mug here. This is very nice. Thank you very much. That's not a mug. That's a beer glass. Whatever. You guys know what I mean. That's a Hivjet in Klingon because it's a Klingon one. See? Hivjet. Whereas mug might be Tulum, although it's technically teacup. But I don't know. I drink tea out of mugs all the time, so I feel like that works for me. What do you think, Bent?
I like it.
Okay. So maybe a Tulum would be appropriate for a mug. Anyway. It's not supposed to be a Klingon lesson. If you decide that you want to play along, but you don't want to drink, that's perfectly fine. You can play along with soda, tea, coffee, juice, water. Bent is playing with soda. If you want to take a hit from your vape, if you want to, I don't know, grab a little snack every time, right? Like, oh, every time that there's a drink, I eat a little bit of popcorn. That's fine. Whatever you want. Just if you do decide to play with any kind of intoxicating substance, know your limits, pace yourself, stay safe, and if you decide to, in fact, indulge, do not then go out and drive a car, operate heavy machinery, ride a maker, fly a plane, or text your ex. Just don't do it. It's not safe. None of those are safe. Don't do them. All right, so let's see. Shano07 AU says, no worries, Dapper. I found some more loose change in the couch. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me your loose change. Man, I wish I could find $25 in a couch. How cool would that be? All right, so let's go with the drinking rules. Why we drink. So first, we will drink if Kent Hovind says something that's so stupid we just kind of have to cool our brains down. You know, gotta lower the temperature in there. Which is especially important because not only is my human suit that I'm wearing very, very hot and itchy, this is additional hot and itchy. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind actually gets something factually correct, but it can't just be him quoting something else or citing something directly. It actually has to be stuff that's in his brain, comes down to his vocal apparatus, and then out, and we hear it, and it's correct. And then, yeah. If he's just quoting someone else, that's someone else getting something right and Kent just reading it. That doesn't count. We will also take a drink if Kent Hovind tells a joke that doesn't land or tells a story that didn't happen. Now, that is going to be a judgment call, especially with the stories, right? Like, did that story happen or not? I don't normally have a way to verify it, but you can usually tell. Like if Kent is like, oh yeah, so one time I was at a museum and my daughter was like, excuse me, sir, isn't the idea that you're going to date the geological column using index fossils circular reasoning? And then that guy is like, oh geez, I guess I should give my life to Jesus. Yeah, that's probably a story that didn't happen. Just saying, something like that might have happened, but that exact story, no, probably not. So we'll take a drink if he tells a story like that. We'll also tell a drink if Kent Hovind mixes up anything about the larger taxon to which Lucy, the single Australopithecus afarensis, belonged, with what we can know just from Lucy. So, for instance, if he's like, well, we don't know if Australopithecus could walk upright because we don't have fossilized Australopithecus feet because Lucy wasn't found with feet. Well, it is true that Lucy wasn't found with feet, but other Australopithecines were, like the Dakika child. So, yeah. That's called ad hominem. We only get one of those per stream at maximum. Also, if Kent Hovind cites a source and we check the source and it not only fails to support him, which it always does, as long as it's not a creationist source, but if it actively contradicts him, we call that a Trojan source and we take a drink for it. Which sometimes, interestingly enough, the Trojan sources are the Bible. Sometimes the Bible has directly contradicted what Kent is saying, and I love those. Because the whole thing that Kent is going for is like, well, I'm all about the Bible, taking the Bible seriously and literally. It's like, yeah, well, let's check the Bible. Oh, Kent. Let's see. We'll also take a drink if Kent Hovind mentions that political party that was really popular in Germany in the 1930s and 40s and whose ideological successors are currently in power in the US. That does not necessarily mean that he violates Godwin's law, because Godwin's law is about comparing someone to those people. He just has to mention them. So this is technically not the Godwin's law drink trigger, although anytime he violates Godwin's law or shows an example of Godwin's law, I don't really know. We will take a drink for it. Let's see. We will take a drink if either Bent or I can predict what Bent or what Kent is about to say, if it's not clear what he's about to say next, which, you know. Let's see. We'll also take a drink if Mothra or Godzilla come by audibly. That is a bit of a random thing that can happen sometimes. We'll also take a drink if anyone super chats or membership milestone chats anything with any of our kaiju emojis, which include Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, as well as if anyone super chats or membership milestone chats anything to the effect that Answers in Genesis or AIG are a bag of dicks. You do have to be a little bit creative, because if you just type in Answers in Genesis is a bag of dicks, yeah, YouTube will censor that. So you gotta like try doing it in a different language or use different wording, something like that. We also like alliteration, that's always fun. We'll also take a drink for every Dapper Dinosaur membership that is gifted up until we have to take more than 30 drinks in a row, in which case we're just gonna finish the drink that I have and increment the drink counter by that much, and then go get another drink. And what am I missing? Oh, Dapper's a professional. If I screw up the production of the show, then we will take a drink. Now, that has to be me. If YouTube goes down, or the internet goes down, or an asteroid slams into the house, or war were declared, that's not on me. We don't take a drink for that. What am I missing, Bent?
You mentioned AAG.
I did?
Yeah, that's everything then.
All right. And in case you are wondering, we have the flame animation on today because this is Dumb 2, which is based on the game Doom 2, and we are in hell. So there you go. Let's see. Also, one last thing. We do have a super chat goal. If we get 30 super chats in the, well, now it's 28, in the next hour and 35 minutes, then we'll have met the super chat goal, and I will be grateful. Which I think is one of the greatest super chat goals, because, quite frankly, what else could you ask for other than my gratitude? Really. I mean, it's basically just that. All right. Yeah, that is. It really is all you need. All right, so, oops, that's YouTube saying, hey, do you want to send a super chat? And no, YouTube, I don't want to super chat myself. That's just me giving YouTube 30% of whatever I send so that I can get the remaining 70 back. That's just me flushing 30% of my money down the toilet. No, YouTube, I don't want to do that. I did mention kaiju audible appearances. Yes, I did. Aran Nox, or Aran Nox. I'm not particularly sure how to pronounce your name, and I'm sorry about that. All right. Bent, do you have anything else that we need to go over before we hit play on this?
Oh, I do want to say thank you to Robert, who gifted me items on my Amazon wish list. Thank you so much, Robert. I do appreciate that.
Oh, and hey, we just got another $10 donation. So thank you very much on that. Oops. No, I can't just type in 10. I type in plus 10. There we go. And that was from Daniel, thank you very much, Daniel. And then Dutch, man that's never saw snow, tunic for $2, said, it's very fitting to be in hell reviewing Kent. Yes. Yes, it is. All right, let's adjust the tracker here. And remember, everybody, we did have one of our regulars, DM Wing, lose his gifted membership. And DM Wing could be one of those that we might want to rally around and try to see if we can get him another gifted membership, because DM Wing is a fairly important part of the community here in chat. And let's see. Did I miss something? Oh, yeah, there it is. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $5 says, can Dumb 2 be played on a potato, or is that just its subject? I actually don't know the degree to which Dumb 2 is also, like, supportable on virtually any platform, including, like, ATMs and calculators. So yeah, I don't know, actually. That would be an interesting thing to look into, because I've never actually checked, you know? I did see a video where someone actually played the original Dumb on a Raspberry Pi, but that was powered by potato batteries. Unfortunately, in order to get enough power from the potato batteries, they had to be slightly rotted so that there was more acid in them, and so he basically just hooked up with electrical cables in series, just scores of potatoes in his garage, and let them rot a bit, and then he played in the stinking, rotting potatoes garage on a Raspberry Pi, and I was like, you know what? I am going to pass on that. That sounds absolutely terrible. But then again, we did just get a few more things. Let's see. Erechamian just got 5 more Dapper Dinosaur memberships for us, so thank you very much, Erechamian. Then Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, things we know from science, A. afarensis had no hands or feet, Tiktaalik had no back legs or tail, most animals are just floating teeth, and Parasaurolophus could spit fire with 2 Dr. Win deal with it emojis. Thank you very much. And then Neurondiplets for $2 says, obvious donation bait is obvious. No, look, here's the thing, right? The reason I am even able to continue to do this is because you guys donate. And so, yeah, I absolutely am here, at least in part, for your donations. I could not do this as regularly and as often and for as long as I do if you guys don't donate. So, like, I'm not here to hide that, right? In fact, a few days ago, I was in Craig's live chat, and someone was, before he started even, was like, oh, you're just trying to pay your rent, Craig. I can see right through you. It's like, yeah, that's the job. Like, no one goes around to, like, someone who's working at, like, I don't know, a construction site and, like, you don't actually really care about construction. You're just trying to pay your rent and buy groceries. Yes, that's true. It's not that I don't care, but, like, yeah, that's a big part of it. So, yeah, this is not a secret. Kent Long Halstead of Nantucket for $4.99 says, thumbnail makes me want to make a Young Earth Creationist Doom wad, or at least a single map. I love Doom even though it's older than me. Sorry if that makes you feel old. First of all, yes it does. Second of all, you should absolutely make a Yek Doom wad, and then you should send it to me, because I will play it on stream. I will test it first to make sure that it's appropriate to play on stream, because, you know, like, I don't want to be, like, playing it and then suddenly, like, adult content flashes up on screen unexpectedly, getting me a community guideline strike. But, like, as long as I can test it and make sure that there's nothing, like, community guidelines violating, I would absolutely play a Doom wad of, like, a creationist theme thing. Like, maybe the map is set in Dinosaur Adventureland or something, where the dinosaurs have come alive and they're now attacking everyone. That would be a cool Doom mod. Or WAD, I should say. Which is a weird thing. It's .wad and stands for where's all the data. Which is like, that's weird, guys. But anyway, Kent was just telling us about how assuage is a very different word from recede when talking about the waters going away after the flood. And he's very upset with translations like the New International Version for using words like recede and also calling the animals wild, even though, I mean, according to the Bible, it was 2 of every single animal on Earth, and spoiler, most animals on Earth are wild animals. So that would mean that most of the animals would have to be wild. But now he's going to give us his conspiracy theory reason on why there are so many Bible translations. At least I think that's what he's about to do. And then Goop23 for $2, trying to prevent us from actually having to watch Kent, which I do appreciate. Says, Dapper has donation bait, and buddy, I'm a fish. Thank you very much. Oh. I appreciate that. All right. So, looks like we have not received a new donation since the last $10 one, so we are now ready to hit play. Here we go.
They say that God remembered Noah and all the wild animals.
Oh, I have this set to a high speed because I was fast-forwarding it to get back to where we were. My bad.
Now they added that, okay? There's no place the Bible says they were wild.
Okay. I'm gonna take a drink because this is dumb, right? Okay. Let's say I told you, dude, I just watched some guy have his head explode out on the street. And you were like, wow, it sucks that guy just died out there. And I was like, I never said he died. Technically, that's true. Technically, that's true. But the thing I said pretty much precludes any other interpretation, right? So if 2 of every living animal go on the ark, guess what? We're just going to test your knowledge here. Is the number of species that are domesticated bigger or smaller than the number of living species that are not domesticated?
Smaller.
Good job. Yes, in fact, most living species are not domesticated. Yeah. So, if 2 of every animal group goes on the ark, guess what? Most of them are wild animals. Sorry.
Quite the opposite, actually. The Bible teaches they were not afraid of man until after the flood. But see, in order to get a copyright on a book,
the distinction between wild and domesticated is not whether or not they're afraid of humans, right? Like, there are animals that are famously not afraid of humans. Quokkas are a great example, right? This is a marsupial from down under, and they are famously unafraid of humans. But they're still wild animals. You shouldn't keep one as a pet. They might bite you still. They're not domesticated. The distinction is not afraid of humans and pets, or farm animals too. Sure, can't count farm animals.
you have to make a certain percentage, a certain number of changes, or they won't give you a copyright because you're basically writing the same book. So that's why they added all sorts of things and took all sorts, just to make it different, so they could get a copyright on it.
Okay, let's take another drink. So this is Kent's explanation as to why there are different Bible translations. But here's the thing. That's not why. Now, English is unusual in the degree to which it has just an absurd number of Bible translations. And I'm not going to disagree with Kent that perhaps there are too many. I think there are indeed probably too many, and many of them are not very good. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $2 says, "Ah yes, the famously domesticated polar bear." Yeah, right. Oh, they're just cuddly little guys. And by little, I mean gigantic. Ever seen a polar bear in real life up close?
Not that close, but in a zoo I have.
Yeah, they are big.
They're pretty big.
Yeah. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, "There's an ARG, animated Noah's Ark movie, which is weirdly inappropriate, where God literally falls asleep and forgets about Noah and his family until he's woken up by them reciting psalms." I'm not sure how I would turn that into an ARG. Then again, I'm not creative enough to make an ARG, so... Or at least perhaps I'm not creative in the right direction as to make an ARG. I don't know. Maybe Bent could do it. You think, Bent? Want to make an ARG?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, so probably not then. All right. So here's the thing, right? The real reason that there are a lot of Bible translations is because different groups of translators have different goals and different philosophies, right? So, like, why is there a new international version? Well, it's because a group of evangelical biblical translators wanted to have a translation in which they made choices that were in line with their theological positions when there are choices to be made in the translation, right? Because one of the things you got to remember about translation is basically any sentence that you can find in a target language can be reasonably translated in more than one way into a target language. Or sorry, into the original language. Yeah. Any phrase or sentence in the original language can be translated multiple ways into the target language. And which way you translate it is going to be based on certain things, like how do you interpret it? And if you have a particular like theological interpretive framework, then that's going to color how you translate the Bible. So, for instance, the NIV was translated by fairly conservative evangelical scholars to be a fairly conservative evangelical leaning translation. which is one of the reasons why a lot of evangelicals like it, because it gives support to a lot of their distinctive doctrines. On the other hand, the English Standard Version was translated for two big reasons. One, the people who translated thought that other translations, including the NIV, were perhaps insufficiently literal in their translation. They wanted a closer to the original translation. But also, because the translators of the ESV wanted to make the most complementarian, aka sexist, translation of the Bible it was possible to reasonably make with the original text as it is. And so they did. And they consistently made the most sexist possible choice when translating the ESV. The Douay Rheims was translated for Catholics in order to reflect Catholic interpretive traditions, right? You can just keep going down the line. There are multiple translations of the Bible. There are even Jewish translations of the Bible, including the New Testament, that are made for the use of Jewish people who want to study both the Tanakh as well as what the Christians consider the New Testament. Because while the New Testament doesn't factor at all into Jewish spirituality, it's still an important text, and a lot of people are familiar with it and reference it. And it's a pretty good idea if you're going to live in like Western society to have some idea of what's. So yeah, like that's the reason. Now, this is enabled by the fact that the copyright system will allow you to copyright new translations of the Bible. But like, okay, that's still not the reason it's done. Even if that weren't the case, new translations would be made. You know how I know? Because new translations of the Bible into English were being made before copyright was a thing, including the book that King James is based on, the Bishop's Bible, as well as the Geneva Bible. All right, we have a few super chats in here. Kent Long Halstead of Nantucket for $4.99 says, "Oh wait, I forgot there is already a Young Earth Creationist WOD. It's called Super Noah's Ark 3D. Wait, really? You need to send me this information." Dutch Mammoth Never Saw Snow Tunicate for $2 says, "Hang on, Kent must think T-Rex were domesticated." He might, actually. I know that he's hinted that he thinks that maybe T-Rex was Leviathan from the Bible, which is a really weird take, because Leviathan is a sea monster, and I don't know if I could think of a dinosaur that I would think of as less of a sea monster than T-Rex. Like, yeah. Terrador's Final Form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, "Dabs, I don't care at all about this translation stuff. If the KJV was good enough for Jesus, the greatest American who ever lived, good enough for me." Thank you. Ooh, alright, I'm just gonna move on from that one. The Romdaputs for $5 says, "Also, does Kent just think Hebrew is just a relex of English, so there's a right way to translate it?" The thing is, I don't know the degree to which Kent understands anything about like the challenges of translation and anything. The thing is, I don't know the degree to which he speaks any other language. I've heard him come up with sentences in Spanish that were very simple, but that didn't seem like something that he had just memorized from someone else, right? So like, I think he has a little tiny bit of Spanish. He can ask where things are. I think he can say hello. So he probably is aware that languages aren't just complete relexes of each other. But I doubt that he has that internalized to the degree to which he would understand that you can't really just always translate one sentence directly into a target language with no ambiguity and no chance of translating it in a different way. So yeah, I don't really know. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $5 also says, "You mean the KJV was never checked by the copyright?" Yeah, so there's a weird thing about the KJV, right? The KJV is not copyrighted. And in most places that respect international copyright law, you can do whatever you want with that text. If like me sitting here as an American, if I want to make my own edition of the King James Version of the Bible, I can just do it. I can send it to a printer, and I can get it printed, and I can sell it. But in England, while it's technically not copyrighted, there's also a publication law like on the books that says only the Crown is actually allowed to publish and sell the KJV. So like, King Charles gets the KJV money if you buy a KJV in England, which is weird to me. And I don't think that law applies in Scotland, because the Scottish Church is not the same church as the Church of England, which is also a little bit weird, but the Church of Scotland is actually a Presbyterian church, unlike the Anglican Church, which is an Episcopal church. So yeah, it's weird and complicated, and I don't really get all of it. But I'm not in England, so I don't have to care what the king says. I have to care what a different king says. So take that one king. Here we go.
See, the King James, of course, is not copyrighted. So they were not
that's
wild
right. Take a
animals,
drink.
because this conflicts with other scripture, which says, you know, they were not afraid of man until after the flood was over. Genesis chapter 9. We'll get to that.
Here's another fun thing. The fact that a translation of the Bible contradicts with another part of the Bible isn't actually a problem for the translation. Because, spoiler alert, the Bible is not internally consistent 100% of the time. Sorry. There are contradictions in the Bible. In fact, for a very long time, this wasn't even something that Christians denied. Right? The very fact that harmonies were a common, like, Bible fanfic genre that people made is because people recognized that there were contradictions. And they would come up with ways to say, okay, well, this is a contradiction, but what if this is the way that it actually happened, and we can understand why there were differences? Which, I mean, sure, go ahead, I don't care. Do whatever you want. But, like, this idea that there are absolutely no contradictions in the Bible and that Christianity in some way depends existentially on whether or not the Bible is completely inerrant in every single dot and diddle of the text, like, that's not a long-standing Christian belief, right? That's something Christians made up basically not that long ago, and something Christians could just as easily get rid of. Which, to be fair, most Christians belong to groups that do not necessarily say that the Bible has to be inerrant, right? Like, that's not a thing that you find in, say, the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church as official positions of those churches. Which, those combined encompass most Christians. So, yeah, you put those together, and they are larger than the number of Protestants. Now, if you want to go and, like, haggle over exactly how their membership rolls are counted, like, does every baptized Catholic really count, even the ones that are lapsed? I don't know, whatever, man. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, but languages are relexes of each other. Donde I esta do la not biblioteca bargain. I hate it. Why do you do this to me, Terrador's final form? Why would you do that? You guys just want to see me suffer. That's what it is. At least you guys aren't making me suffer as much as fucking Johnny Somali's viewers are. Those guys have goaded him into possibly getting 31 years in prison in Korea. Yeah, that's the maximum that he could be facing currently, as of what the charges look like right now.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is. He probably won't actually get 31 years, but he could very well be facing a decade behind bars in Korea, doing forced labor on a cabbage farm. That's what a lot of prison labor is in Korea, is farming cabbage. Because kimchi, the national dish, is a cabbage dish, which means Korea grows a lot of cabbage. Which, I mean, I love kimchi, so keep going, Korea. Please grow all the cabbage and turn it all into kimchi so I can eat it. Not all of it, obviously. I want to eat some of it. I suppose the Koreans should get most of it. I want some of it, though, just a little bit.
That later on. Okay. Then it says here in the NIV, the waters receded. Now, this is a mistake. The water did not recede. The water sank down. It dropped straight down.
And can you figure out the significant difference between those? Because I sure can't.
I don't know how that's different than receding.
Yeah, I can't. Look, if you in the chat can figure out what you think the significant difference is between assuage and recede in this context, please let me know.
If we filled this building 5 feet deep in water,
Okay. We'd have a lot of repairs. Actually, I saw a thing about there's a restaurant owner who knew a flood was coming, and so he flooded his own restaurant with fresh water from the taps because it would do less damage than the silt and debris-laden water, and he filled it to just higher than he expected the floodwater to be, because while it would still cause water damage, it would cause less than the dirty floodwater. And you know what? It worked. He had a lower repair bill.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was a very strange thing, because when he does it, like, there's no water outside. He's just, like, water sealed the door and everything. And, yeah, he's just waiting around in his restaurant. He's like, yeah, this is going to be cheaper in the long run. It's like, okay, cool, dude.
Bill would be excited, because his office is right there. But if we did. And then a section of the floor caved in.
Okay.
Just dropped down, called a sinkhole. You know,
Okay.
anybody ever seen a sinkhole where the
Yes. Okay. So in case you guys don't know, sinkholes are usually the result of man-made erosion. They don't normally happen naturally because what happens is you have to have flowing water that is somewhat contained and then starts to leak out, and then some of the sediment falls into the flowing water. You could get it with like an underground river or something that starts to erode at the top, but normally it happens as a result of pipe leakages and breaks, right? And so what happens is as the sediment starts to fill into the water flow, which is usually pretty light overall, like the rate is usually not very high, but what that creates is a little cavity underground. And so as that continues, there's a hollow, and there's less and less ability to bear the load of the overburden above the hole. And so eventually, you get to the point where the overburden is too high for the ability of the underlying sediment to actually support it, and so the top section falls into the void. That's why it's a sinkhole. Because all of a sudden, there's just a hole in the ground, and it can happen in like a couple seconds, which is why they're one of the reasons they're so dangerous, right? Because once you know they're there, well, then you can cordon them off. But what if you're just driving on the road and suddenly the road drops down 20 feet? You just fell into a road hole. That just happens sometimes. Not very often, but it just happens. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Kent doesn't know that stuff. I don't know. There's a fair chance he does. Doesn't contradict anything he holds dear, so he might be right about it. But yeah, that's what a sinkhole is. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $5 says, the waters violently sank down, much like the mean intelligence of most rooms where Kent enters them. It's true, that does rapidly reduce the overall IQ in the room. He's a black hole of intelligence. I was going to say charisma. That's not actually true. He actually manages to hold audiences reasonable. And the reason I kind of hate it is because I can tell that he is an idiot. And also, I still don't think we have a membership for DM Wing. Unfortunately.
Like the roof of a cave just falls in.
That's actually not a terrible analogy. There are a lot of similarities between a sinkhole and a cave collapse. Because in both cases, there's a void weakening the ability of the overburden to be supported, and then that falls in. So yeah, that's actually a pretty good analogy overall. Okay. I'll take a drink for that. That's good job, Ken. I like that one.
That happens all the time. There was a big one in Winter Park down near Orlando. If you ever get down there, Eric, be sure to go to the place where the massive sinkhole was, which is from Orlando. I think you go slightly north and mostly west. Winter Park. A section of a neighborhood caved in and sank down about 40 feet. Took several houses with it.
I hear a Mothra, so let's drink for Mothra. Thank you very much, Mothra. All right. I think we just had a pretty big donation here. Or several smaller ones. Let's double check. Joshua just gifted $200 on the GoFundMe. So thank you
That's incredible.
very much, Joshua. Yeah. Which also puts us at 87%. And I happen to know that around 91%, someone gets pizza. And by someone, I mean Bent. Bent gets pizza. I buy
Nice.
Bent pizza. Yeah.
Always a good deal.
It is always a good deal for you. And also, we are nearly at the halfway point for the Super Chat goal, which remember, if we make the Super Chat goal, then according to the goal, we'll have met the Super Chat goal, and I will be grateful. Honestly, I was trying to come up with a Super Chat goal incentive, and I was like, I have literally nothing. I just blanked entirely. Because it's been a bit of a day, in case I didn't mention that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be as literal as possible. We will have met the goal, and I will be grateful, because that will be true no matter what. And then every time I check it, YouTube is like, you want to give a $5 Super Chat? No, YouTube! I do not want to Super Chat myself. I don't want to just toss 30% of the whatever money I Super Chat down the toilet. Just stop. Goodness.
Just dropped underground cave, collapsed. Sometimes this happens where these underground caves are full of water.
That's actually usually what happens with a sinkhole. And it's not really a cave in the sense of like a natural cave formation. It's usually that like burst pipes have caused erosion. But like whatever.
So they help support. They don't until people move in and start drilling wells and pumping this water out.
I'm not going to say that can't cause a sinkhole because I don't know. but that is not the normal mechanism of sinkholes that I'm familiar with. But hey, what do I know?
Now all of a sudden, crunch, everything falls down because the roof of the cave won't support it anymore. Who cares? That's called a sinkhole. You can study that. It's called karst topography when you get into that in earth science class.
Okay, that's actually a good thing to look up, is karsts and the geology around karsts. So, like, good job, Kent, on actually giving people a good thing to look into. I'm slightly impressed. While grading on a curve, we want to make sure that that's the case. This is grading on a curve, right? If this weren't Kent, if this were just normal guy, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's cool. But Kent doing anything that's in any way smart is always impressive. So, like, yeah, all right, good job, Kent. Look, I want to be as fair as possible to Kent, right? It's just that being as fair as possible, it means normally just dunking on Kent all the time. Because remember, the fact that you come to a conclusion and take a side doesn't mean that you're biased necessarily. It might just mean that there's one side that's obviously correct. So, yeah. In fact, actually, Legal Eagle put out a video about that today, which was about, like, hey, do we have a partisan bias? And it's like, well, we have a pro-rule of law bias, and it just so happens that currently, right now, most of the stories about people degrading and eroding the ideal of the rule of law in the United States are from one side of the political aisle, currently, right now. So it seems like maybe we have a partisan bias, but that's not what's going on. Yeah, objectively, there is one side right now that's doing that, and calling it out means that you're going to call out one side more often than the other.
So the waters actually assuaged. They dropped down.
I'm just going to look up assuage and see if there's anything about sudden drops in the definition of assuage, because I don't think that that's how that word works. But, like, when was the last time I looked it up? I don't know. Let's see. So, make an unpleasant feeling less intense, satisfy an appetite or desire. Let's check Merriam-Webster. Kent's an American. Pacify or quiet, lessen the intensity of something that pains or distresses, ease, put an end to by satisfying, appease, quench. Let's see. Let's check the Cambridge Dictionary, because, you know, the KJV was translated over in England. Let's see. Assuage. Add salt to something. Okay. Alleviate, ameliorate, lighten, make a difference, idiom. Make someone or something over, phrasal verb, remedial, revamp, revivify, sharpen. These are just synonyms. The government has tried to assuage the public's fears to make an unpleasant feeling less strong. Let's see. Dictionary.com. Maybe Dictionary.com will have something that'll help out here. Let's see. To make milder or less severe, alleviate, ease, mitigate. Synonyms: relieve, lessen, diminish, allay. To appease, satisfy, or sate. To soothe, calm, or mollify. So no. Let's see. Ooh, we could check Britannica. Check Britannica. Let's see. It's formal, according to Britannica, to make something such as an unpleasant feeling less painful, severe, etc. Yeah, I'm just gonna call it. Ken, that's completely just nonsense. There is no sense in which assuage means a sudden drop. I have no idea where Kent got that. I don't know if he made it up himself. I don't know if he got that from one of his mentors who just thought it would be convenient. But other than the fact that, for some reason, Kent finds this interpretation to be convenient to him, there seems to be no reason to think that. So I'm going to take a drink for that. Because, Kent, that's just not... Oh, there's that drink, too. So 2 drinks. All right, thank you. Then by Unfinished Journey, who's been a member for 26 months, and is at the amulet level, says, Hail Nero, Hail Daps, and Bent, and here's to a suggested goal of a rainbow sparkling tutu. I would have to buy a new tutu. I'll tell you what, if you guys can get this percentage to 5,000%, I will buy a sparkling rainbow tutu if I can find one. And if I can't, I will make a 3D model of a sparkling pink tutu, and I will put it on the Dapper Dinosaur avatar. 2 videos. Make up for the fact that I couldn't get a real one. 5,000%. Everybody. Remember, there's a 20% bonus if you send it through the GoFundMe. I can word today. I can't word today. Today's not one of the wording days. I'm sorry, guys. in part because of all the technical difficulties, and also, so Sunday or Monday was a, no, I guess it was Sunday. So Sunday is a day I take off, really. So what I did was I played a lot of Factorio. And so I told Bent about this. One of the things I was doing was I was trying to increase my production on Gleba. So I decided I'm going to put down a few more biolabs to turn Yumako mush into nutrients. Okay, cool. What that did was actually completely kill my bioflux production, because all my Yumako mush was being stolen away to go to nutrient production, which then caused all my captive biter nests to turn wild again because they weren't getting the bioflux that they needed. So that reduced my biter egg capacity, which meant that my fish farms weren't getting any nutrients, so I ran out of fish, which also meant that I had to go and create an entire new Yumako tree stand out of basically just raw dirt, because I didn't actually have anything nearby. So I spent nearly the entire time I was playing, like 5 hours, just trying to fix Gleba so I could get my bioflux production back up, start producing the bioscience science packs, and recapture my biter nests, and then recapture wild fish to start up fish production again. So, like, it's just been technical problems for my entire weekend and the entire week so far. It's been crazy. Team O&B's Wolfly Dogmatic Chronotastic Centrism for $2 says, assuage means add salt in sausage. Is sausage to add pepper? I don't get assuage sausage. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'll be honest, I've never heard of assuage being used to mean add salt, but they said it was an idiom, so maybe I'm just not from the place where it's a common idiom. I have no clue. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $5 says, research rainbow tutus may be found on Amazon for $9.99. Well, there you go. Now we know that if we get to 5,000%, I will be able to get a rainbow tutu. But will it have sparkles, or will I have to add my own? I'm willing to add my own sparkles, right? Just like toss a little bit of glue on the top of the tutu and then sprinkles. Shake it out outside, hopefully, because, you know, sprinkles are just craft store herpes. Once you get them, you can never get them off. And then, yeah, continue on. I'd be willing to do that.
Something happened to the crust of the earth to cause this water to run off in the flood.
Oh, it's the sinking down. He's using this as an explanation for why there was enough water before the flood to cover the earth, but there isn't enough now. Also, Ashley Anka has joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Thank you very much, Ashley. And Mixie for $10 says, per etymology dictionary from the Latin ad suavis, meaning to sweet or pleasant. Does that mean like to sweeten or to make pleasant? I don't know. Which can be reasonably translated as to mean to make better or more tolerable. Thank you very much. I did not look into the etymology, but I like it. Nice. You know, if you're doing Klingon, sweet is a hard thing to translate because there's no single word that just means sweet. Because that's not a thing that Klingons do a lot of. So you have to like get around it. You have to say like, oh, it resembles the flavor of something that happens to be sweet. Oh man. Roshina hashtag upside killers for 199 says sprinkles are crabs or herpes? No, craft. C-R-A-F-T. Charlie, Romeo, Alpha, Foxtrot, Tango, craft. Actually almost forgot how to do some of those letters there because it's been a while since I've been doing the phonetic alphabet. Which is basically, well, by the way, the NATO phonetic alphabet. So all the NATO countries share the same basic phonetic alphabet on that one. There you go. I wonder if that means that, like, the countries that are looking to join NATO, like, pre-adopt the NATO phonetic alphabet, because there's nothing would stop them. I wonder if they do that, and then they start training their military personnel on that, so that by the time they join, or do they just join and then suddenly tell all their military personnel, like, okay, guys, you have to learn a new phonetic alphabet right now. Go. I don't really know.
Flood. If you read Psalm 104, it tells us about this. It says, who laid the foundations of the earth that it should not be removed forever? Thou coverest it with the deep, as with a garment. So this is obviously talking about the flood.
It's the creation! That's a creation there! What the... What? Kent! What are you talking about? Sure, I don't even care. I'm just taking a drink. You know what? No, I do care. Let's look up Psalm 104. Let's look up Psalm 104. In case you're wondering, this is the Masoretic text numbering, not the Septuagint numbering. In case you're one of those people who likes the Septuagint numbering, which, spoiler alerts, I actually do prefer the Septuagint numbering because it unites an acrostic that the Masoretic text splits into 2 psalms. And then it later splits a different psalm up into 2, which seems to be just 2 unrelated things. And I maintain that I think the Septuagint actually preserves the older numbering system, and that the Masoretic text is a later change. And I think that, well, I don't think a whole lot of biblical scholars are like firmly on that side. I will say this: Kip Davis is not necessarily in agreement, but does think that, that take is very reasonable and very plausible. So I will take that as a win. Let's see. Psalm 104. Praise the Lord, my soul. My God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty. The Lord wraps himself with light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent, and he lays the beams of his upper chambers on their waters. So here we have God spreading out the heavens like a tent, which means he's covering the earth with some kind of cover, like a tent, which, spoiler alert, that's the flat earth dome that it's talking about here. And he lays the beams of his upper chambers on their waters, which means that God is actually putting the supports for his palace in the waters of the great deep above the earth. Because remember, in the Old Testament, God is conceptualized as physically being above the earth, sitting above the waters of the great deep that are above the earth, as in, the waters above the heavens that you get in Genesis 1. Okay. He makes the clouds his chariots, and he rides on the wings of the wind. He makes winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. He set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. So here we're going in with creation narrative stuff, right? When God creates the earth, he sets it on the foundations that hold it up in the waters. And he puts the dome to separate the waters. Yep. Let's see. He covered it. You covered it with watery depths as with a garment. The water stood above the mountains, but at your rebuke the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder they took flight. They flowed over the mountains. They went into the valleys, to the place you assigned them. You set a boundary they cannot cross. Never again will they cover the earth. All right, so I will say that at that point, so we are still going in with a lot of creation narrative stuff, and I do think that this is actually talking about the separation of the waters from the water. So remember when God says, "Let the waters gather in one place," and and then he creates the land. Sorry, words. So that is what we're going on about here. But it is easy to take this as a flood narrative, but it's not, because as you can tell when you read the entire thing in context, this is very much about creation. In fact, if we keep going, he makes springs pour water into the ravines. It flows between the mountains. He gives water to all the beasts for their thirst. It goes on about basically how God set up the world. In verse 19, he made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows when to go down. Again, that's stuff that God sets up in Genesis in the creation narrative. So, yeah. Do we have... searching for a particular word. Yep. In fact, this also mentions Leviathan, which connects to creation narratives if you're familiar with wider ancient Near East, like Canaanite theology and text, right? Where the gods actually slay Leviathan and use her body to make the land. And throughout the Bible, in a few places, God is depicted as fighting with and slaying Leviathan in terms of creation accounts. So yeah, this is in fact a psalm about creation, not the flood. Now I do get, again, why Kent would mix this up, but all you have to do is just read the whole psalm and be even vaguely familiar with ancient Near East cosmology and literature. All right, we've got a few more things to read here. Let's see. Terrador's final form for 100 Argentinian pesos says, Exampa is greater than NATO phonetic alphabet, is greater than Proto-Indo-European. I don't know what Exampa is, but maybe it is. I don't know. Let's see. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, many non-NATO countries also use the NATO phonetic alphabet because it's available, and they may need to collaborate with NATO countries. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me in the least. I never looked into it, but yeah, that's cool. Lieutenant Math Navigator for $2 says, context is a satanic plot to destroy your faith. I mean, the way Kent seems to act, you would think that it is. Like, there's Satan putting all these evil ideas about, what if you read the whole psalm? Wait, why isn't this working? There should be a pizza indicator. What is happening here? It should not be required to go that high. That is weird. But you got free pizza, but for some reason it's not showing up.
Yay! And then boo.
I will have to troubleshoot why that is. But that is something to do for another time. It's never done this before. Weird. Okay, hold on. Let me add some zeros onto the GoFundMe thing. Yeah, for some reason it's not accepting the GoFundMe as part of that. That's weird. I'm gonna have to double check what's going on behind the scenes on that. It's bizarre. All right, yeah, you get free pizza. Yeah, you can have it today or some other day. I don't really care. So thank you very much for everyone for getting Bent free pizza. I have no idea why it's working this way. It shouldn't be working this way. The only thing I can think of is that the way I have it programmed, the inputs for total amounts are actually in more than one place, and I need to go find where they are for the pizza thing and actually add the inputs in again. But that is, again, something I will do later, maybe during Power Rangers, which we're doing after this show, by the way. All right, here we go.
In the days of Noah. Psalm 104 is. Then it says, the waters stood above the mountains. And again, if the water is above the mountains, this is not a local flood. This is going to go on the other side of the mountains, obviously.
Okay, look, here's the thing about the local flood, global flood thing. The reason people argue for a local flood is to make the Bible at least plausible in terms of being some kind of historical account. Because if you're suggesting a global flood, a thing we know didn't happen, then there is no possibility that the story of Noah's Ark is in any significant way historic, right? If you want there to be a historical Noah, you have only one option, and it's local flood. The degree to which it contradicts what you think of as the correct interpretation of the Bible is the degree to which your correct interpretation of the Bible means the Bible is wrong. And if you want to say that the Bible's wrong, okay, great. I don't care. I don't currently, as I'm sitting here, have a dog in that fight. Personally, when I'm not on this channel, I might have an opinion about whether or not you should do that. But I don't here, because it's not on topic. But I want people to know that if you're doing that, if you're a Christian and you're saying, oh no, the Bible clearly says Noah had a global flood, and so therefore that is the correct interpretation of the Bible intends to teach a global flood as a real historical event, cool. But the Bible's wrong in that case. Maybe that's okay by you. I don't know. I don't know you necessarily. But if you're a Christian who wants to defend the Bible, that's probably not the way to go. But then again, I will say, I do think there's a fair chance that the author of this section of Genesis did intend to teach that there was a global flood. My Unfinished Journey for $6.66 says, Hail glittery rainbow, with a rainbow emoji, tutus, blah blah Nero. Thank you very much. It is very much appreciated. Also, I really want to say thank you very much to Joshua Geese, who has been by far the biggest contributor to the fundraiser. I think Joshua on his own has donated somewhere around $600, which is absolutely amazing. It's like 20%, or it's not quite 20%. I think it's more like 15% or something like that of what we've raised, which is an absolutely incredible thing. And right now, in case anyone was wondering, we are at 3,810. I fully expect that after tomorrow's stream, there will be more than enough money for me to get exactly the nicest computer that I think I can reasonably justify. And I say that because there are computers that are nice in ways that are just kind of pointless for me, right? Like, oh, what if you got like 867 gigs of RAM? Well, I'm not going to use most of them, so what's the point? I'm not going to use that many gigs of RAM. Like, there's nothing I do with that. It's like, what if you get a 12 terabyte hard drive? It's like, I already got like 10 terabytes worth of storage right now in external drives. I don't need that. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, have you considered that the Bible is a liar sometimes? So there is that, right? There is a difference between not being historical and being a liar. Right? So to me, a lie is when you tell a lie or when you're lying, you are intending to impart to someone a belief that you believe is false, right? Whether or not it is false, right? If I thought that maybe it was fake that collared lizards live around this area in Tucson, but for some reason I decided I wanted to convince Bent that there are definitely collared lizards here. So I go in and say, Bent, you'll never guess, but I was checking to see if the trash had been collected earlier today, and when I opened the front door, there was a collared lizard right on the porch, and it ran into the agave in the front of the house before, I went out. But it was totally there, except there was no collared lizard, and I happen to be under the belief that there are no collared lizards around here. I'd be lying. Now, it turns out that actually is a true story, and collared lizards do live around here, which means that I would be giving Bent an impression about collared lizards that is true, even though I think it's false, which means I'm lying, and Bent still comes away with a true idea. Now, on the other hand, if you sincerely believe a false idea, like that, I don't know, alligator snapping turtles live in Tucson, and I try to convince Ben that alligator snapping turtles live in Tucson, even though they don't, but if I believe it, I'm not lying. I'm just wrong. Now, I don't know that there's any part of the Bible where I can say with any significant amount of confidence that the intent of the author is to make you believe something that the author believed was incorrect. There's certainly parts of the Bible that are not historical, but I don't know that I can say with any confidence that the author didn't think it was historical. I don't really have a lot of access to the author, other than just the text. And basically none of the Bible is written by a known person who we can check on, outside of biblical text and references from other early Christians in the case of very late books, like the works of Paul. So, I don't know. Is the Bible a liar? I can't find any part where I would be more than 50% confident that the author is lying to me. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, have you considered that the Bible... Oh, wait, no, I read that already. That is literally the thing I was just talking about. I'm going to call that as a dapper as a professional. I'm just going to take a drink for it. But also, we are at that point where it is about time for a quick break. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. You guys can watch the new teaser trailer for Star Trek Endurance Season 1, Episode 6, which should be happening on Friday, although that's slightly up in the air for reasons we'll talk about in a bit. And then we will, if break isn't over by the end of that, which probably won't be, we will have the we'll have Bent's music. Musical Silence of Beethoven will play. All right, so I'm going to come back. I'm going to try to figure out how to speak English when I get back, because apparently that is a skill that I am slowly losing today. So we'll see you on the other side.
Captain's Log, Stardate 60046.3. We have received an urgent message from Admiral Talara of Starfleet Command. We are ordered to redirect the ship to the colony on Carina 7 in the Beta Quadrant. The colony's governor, Sarita Sebastian, is reporting a series of strange phenomena that threaten the colony's safety. She states the children born on Carina 7 are aging rapidly. The native flora and fauna are growing rapidly and just as rapidly withering, and structures that should have lasted decades are falling apart. The Kong Z is the closest ship to the colony with quantum slipstream drive, and it is imperative that we discover a solution to the colony's problems.
Carina 7 is a warm M-class planet as near to Earth in terms of environment as it could be hoped. The planet was settled a few years earlier by a group of mostly winemakers, and it is a vital part of the Federation's strategy to improve relations with the Ferengi Alliance. The wine is sold to Ferengi merchants, and the Latinum is used by the Federation in dealings with polities that still use currency-based economics. The rapid aging phenomenon threatens this key strategic world, and if the crew cannot solve it, the colony is doomed. Is it a natural phenomenon? Or is it being orchestrated by unseen actors? Or is it perhaps a secret third thing? Find out next time on Star Trek Endurance, only on the Top Hats Off channel.
We are back. Welcome back, Bent.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
All right. Well, first, I want to say I hope everyone liked that teaser trailer, because that was the most expensive in terms of sheeped points teaser trailer I have ever produced. Because that exterior shot of the vineyard with all the dead vines, that was about 1,000 points per frame. And it cost about as much as like several thousand Dapper Dinosaur frames. It was very expensive. So, but it was also fun to make, and I had a good time making it. So my unfinished sock for $5 says, "Don't run around wearing only a glittery rainbow tutu, or go ahead and do that. Whatever. Either way, like and share the stream with a rainbow emoji." Yeah. I would recommend checking the indecent exposure laws in your jurisdiction if your plan is to run around wearing nothing but a tutu. I'm sure there are plenty of jurisdictions where that's perfectly legal, but double check yours. Also, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I'm just telling you, seek out legal advice, because you don't want to get into legal trouble. And I think that's the closest thing to legal advice I'm allowed to give, is like, hey, maybe get a lawyer. Maybe check. Kent Long Halstead of Nantucket for $9.99 says, Kent, my evil twin, has yet to demonstrate enough faith to literally move mountains on a mountain which Jesus said was minuscule. That is a good point. Kent, I want to see you move a mountain, my man. Or, sorry, but, score one for atheists, I guess. Can't move a mountain. That's gonna be my new standard. Of course, Kent's gonna say that that's not supposed to be taken literally, obviously. Why would you even think that? To which I would just respond, hey, Kent, how do you know that? How? Is it because it doesn't work literally? Okay. Well, this doesn't work literally either. So, like, we're going to use that as our hermeneutic. I feel like what that means is you don't have a leg to stand on with any of this stuff. So, yeah. All right. So, before we get back into it, I do want to say that you guys know this, but this channel is almost entirely supported in just completely by you guys gifting memberships, giving super chats, giving super thanks, super stickers like Gupdu3 did earlier. But also I do have a Patreon, and Bent also has a Patreon. We also both have Amazon wishlist links in the description. There's also merch right below this video. Any of that stuff really helps. If you join the channel or join the Patreon, which starts at only $1 a month or $1.99 for the channel memberships, or you can get a 15% discount if you pledge annually on the Patreon. You get early access to all my videos. One came out just today. If you want an extra 58 minutes and I think like 8 seconds or something of Dapper Dinosaur content, it's available to you right now. If you pay the $10 and something in cents in US for a year of access to it, or if you pay like the $1 for a month of access to it. And I'm expecting at least one more video to come out within the next like 4 or 5 working days. So that's aspirational, so I'm not promising that, but like, yeah, it's certainly a possibility. And then Lieutenant Math the Navigator just gifted 5 more Dapper Dinosaur memberships. Thank you so much. Which means, Bent, good news and bad news.
Yeah.
The good news is my next video is going to have a fancy avatar. The bad news is, guess who's wearing this next time?
Me.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
All right. So, thank you very much. Take 5 drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So, let's get into this. Yeah, here we go.
So, according to the Hovind theory,
Yeah.
during the last few months of the
I just want to point out, very few actual theories get named after someone, and basically none of them ever actually get named after the guy who invented them. That is, like, unconscionably egocentric. Like, no, like, we don't normally call the theory of general relativity the Einstein theory. Right? We don't call universal gravitation the Newton theory. We don't call the germ theory of disease the whoever it was. I don't know, Pasteur theory. I don't actually know who it was. The fact that I don't know who it was should tell you something. Like, it's so weird. A Hovind theory.
flood, the unstable plates of the earth, which has now been fractured, here's the earth, the crust of the earth, all busted up like an eggshell. Some places are going to sink down, other places are going to lift up.
Why? Literally, why? What are the mechanisms, Ken? Because all of the mechanisms that cause uplift or subsidence in like large scale plate tectonics are already accounted for. And you know what none of them involve? Is global floods or subterranean oceans or giant ice comets coming in from space that, despite adding huge amounts of energy to the Earth, somehow lower its temperature. None of that is a thing that plate tectonics has any need for or even any allowance for. And yet all of the subsidence and the uplift is accounted for, right? I used to live in Massachusetts, which is a place that's currently doing some uplift. And it's uplifting as a result of previous subsidence from the overburden of a glacier. And that's the reason why Massachusetts sometimes gets earthquakes, right? Because the earth is popping up. And occasionally there's a little bit of a fracture somewhere deep underground, and it pops up a little bit all at once. You get a little bit of an earthquake. They're not bad, right? I don't think that like the worst earthquake in Massachusetts even registered like a, scale 3 or anything. But like they happen. I felt one. Actually, the only place I've ever felt an earthquake. How does the flood account for this? How does the flood account for what's mostly volcanic uplift in, say, the western part of the Grand Canyon, or the mountains in the Rockies, or the mostly holding uplift of the Himalayas right now? How does the flood model account for any of these things? I don't know. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be a way. But basically, Kent is just doing this as a way to get the Earth to have a lower relief before the flood, so that the flood can cover the mountains. That's it. If that weren't in the Bible, you wouldn't believe this, because there's literally no reason to believe it, other than that he needs to account for why there's not enough water to currently flood the Earth. And if you need to just make up wild, crazy assumptions to make your idea work, then you are violating Occam's razor, right? Occam's razor is do not needlessly multiply entities. So if, say, I don't know, Bent, what is your explanation for how ice forms in the freezer from liquid water?
It gets really cold and then the water freezes.
How does that happen, though? What makes it
The
transition?
molecules stay in place.
Why?
Instead of flowing past each other, because they lose a lot of energy.
Mhm.
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, there's a little bit more. There's some stuff like hydrogen bonding helping to form crystals and nucleation sites allowing the crystals to form and whatnot. But that's pretty good. But what if, in addition to that, I say, but first they need to be blessed by the ice fairy who comes around to every freezer? And don't worry, you can't find the ice fairy because the ice fairy is actually very, very sneaky and can get into your freezer right as you're opening or closing the door. But if you could somehow get water into your freezer without opening or closing any openings that the ice fairy could get through, she might not be able to freeze your ice. But if your ice does freeze, that just means she found a way in, so don't worry about it. What's the problem with my explanation?
That's unnecessary.
Exactly. There is no reason to assume an ice fairy, except that maybe I like ice fairies. Guess what? There's no reason to assume the sudden subsidence all across the Earth, including there's no reason from the Bible, because again, assuage doesn't mean that, Kent. There's no reason to accept any of this stuff. It's just a made-up thing that Kent had to add to his whole idea in order to make it seem somewhat more plausible. But it's not. Fundamentally, it's not plausible. It is completely implausible. Kent is okay with that because Kent doesn't care about things like logic, like Occam's razor, like the scientific method, like following the evidence where it leads. Kent has a conclusion, and goddamn, he's going to get to that conclusion no matter how many barriers you throw up in his, no matter how many things he just has to make up out of whole cloth to make it work. That's what Kent's doing, and it is one of the clearest signs that the person you're talking to doesn't like science, doesn't care about science, but instead is a pseudoscience. The flat earthers do it. The chemtrail guys do it. The sovereign citizens do it. Creationists do it. Bigfoot chasers do it. Right? Now, of these, I probably have the most sympathy for Bigfoot because what if Big Ape is not a crazy thing on its face, right? Like, sure, what if Big Ape? Oh, I don't know. Maybe. But, like, all of these people do that. Like, hey, how come you've never found a body of a Bigfoot? Oh, well, they're very, very sneaky. What do you mean they're very sneaky? They're gigantic apes. How sneaky could a gigantic ape actually be? Well, you'd be surprised. Okay, but they also knock wood together very loudly? Like, well, yeah, that's how they communicate. But they're also sneaky. Yeah. You see, they only knock wood when they're far away from people. Well, how do they know when they're far away from people? Well, they have an excellent sense of smell. Well, apes don't normally have excellent sense of smell. Well, they're an exception to this. And it just keeps on going, right? There's an endless number of just made-up excuses that, yeah, maybe, which all are just violating Occam's razor. The most likely explanation for why no one's found a Bigfoot body is that there's just no such thing as Bigfoot. There you go. That's the most likely explanation. Is it the fun explanation? No. But is it the explanation that's most likely? Yeah, it is. Because that's the explanation that follows Occam's razor. And yeah, you're not just making up stuff for that. Why aren't there Bigfoot bodies? It's probably no Bigfoot. Simple as that. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian peso says, Daps, there is no real issue with your explanation. The Rise of the Guardians explained that you can only see Jack Frost if you believe in him. Hey, thank you. That's good. That's good to know. I was beginning to get worried about the Ice Fairy. So yeah. And the thing is that this kind of behavior is just ubiquitous when it comes to young Earth creationists. It is all over the place. And it's because they're fundamentally pseudoscientists. I know a lot of them object to being called pseudoscientists. In fact, I've heard them complain like, well, my Wikipedia page says I'm a pseudoscientist. It's the first thing it says. Yeah. You know why? Because you do stuff like this. You don't want to be called a pseudoscientist? Don't do pseudoscience. It's actually not that hard. It's really not. Bent, how many times have you been accused of being a pseudoscientist?
0.
Yeah. You want to know why? It's probably because you don't do any pseudoscience.
No, I don't.
There you go. Raise your hand in the chat. Give me a little raised hand emoji if you've been accused of being a pseudoscientist recently. My guess is we won't get many raised hands.
Like a water bed. You push down one place, someplace else comes up.
Okay. I'm going to take a drink. Yeah, that's not how Earth works. The fact that waterbeds do that is because the liquid is entirely contained in a flexible container. But the magma under the Earth isn't completely contained. It comes to the surface sometimes. You know how I know? It's because volcanoes exist. There are ways to relieve the pressure that don't result in other parts needing to sink down. Now, on average, is uplift going to be more or less countered by subsidence and erosion and whatnot? Yeah, on the long run, sure. But, like, there doesn't have to be any immediate balancing. And in the short term, they can be unbalanced.
So these plates are going to shift. Thin spots sink down to become oceans. Thicker spots lift up.
It's not primarily because they're thicker. Oceanic crust is thinner, and it sinks, and it's made of basalt. But the big thing there is that basalt is more dense, so it tends to sink more, which means more of it melts away, which is why it's going to be thinner, right? So, like, yeah, it's not that simple. And plus, if it were really thick but very heavy crust, it would sink, despite the thickness. And it would end up being thin. Kent's getting the causality wrong here. The ocean crust isn't thin because it's dense and therefore sinks. It's thin it doesn't sink because it's thin. It sinks because it's dense and is therefore thin. That's what I'm trying to say. Again, words. What are they? Who invented them? I don't know. That guy was a dick.
To become mountains. It's real simple. The runoff of the water is going to cause huge erosion canyons in a hurry. The Bible says in Psalm 104, verse 7, at thy rebuke they fled. Now the they is referring back to the waters earlier in this verse.
Yep. Terrador's final form for 100 Argentinian pesos says, I've been reminiscing spelling, I don't know, I'm not going to double check it, about some old memes, and I just want to say, AIG's out for Harambe. I'll take a drink for that. That's pretty good. I like it. All right. Then let me adjust the thing here. Because you never know, guys. If we get to 200%, then Bench doesn't have to wear this tutu again. I do.
The waters fled. At the voice of thy thunder, they hasted away. They hurried away. If you have water that is hurrying away, you have erosion.
Okay, that part's true. I'll take a drink. You would get flood erosion, which we have examples of. My two favorite examples are that there are a lot of gigantic flood spillways on Mars, a lot of them, that are very, very old, and also the Channel Scablands in Eastern Washington. One of the biggest flood formations known to science. It is huge, full of ripple marks that from the ground just look like ridges and hills, but they're actually ripple marks of gigantic ripples. We're talking ripples that are tens of miles across, hundreds of feet tall. These are gigantic ripples. And so we know what flood runoff looks like, even at gigantic scales. You know what it doesn't look like is the Grand Canyon. But I'll bet you Ken's going to talk about the Grand Canyon.
Rapidly moving water can cut through a lot of things. Eric, go back here and grab, I hate to have you keep doing this, but I'm tied into my cord here. The dinosaur made out of steel, you know.
Coop23 for $5 says, in keeping with the old meme theme, instructions unclear. Got AIG caught in ceiling fan. I'll take a drink. That's pretty good. And also, we are only 7 super chats away from meeting the super chat goal, which will mean that we have met the super chat goal, and I will be very grateful. But we only have 25 minutes and 40 seconds left. Can we do 7 super chats in 25 minutes? I think we can.
The closest one to me over here, bottom shelf. Yeah.
And I just noticed DM Wing is still not a member. Darn it.
Hand that to me if you would. A guy sent me this years ago, made
Okay.
out of 1/4-inch plate steel.
I really want to know how a steel dinosaur is going to fit into the whole, like, erosion thing. Goop23 for $5 says, in keeping... Oh, wait, no, that just came in already. Why is my chat window so far behind my viewer activity window? That is really weird. Huh.
He said, Brother Hovind, I work in a welding shop and I made this for your museum. Oh, he's got his footy things on here. I looked at it. I said, man, how did you cut that so smooth?
A laser? I'm either guessing water or a laser, but since I know that this is about the Grand Canyon ultimately, I'm going to say it was with a water jet. Yeah. Is Kent about to compare flood runoff to a high-power water jet made for cutting steel?
It seems like he might be.
Kent knows that there's a maximum energy that you can get out of water that's just flowing downhill, right? That's just potential energy. However much gravitational potential energy is the maximum it can have, and it's only going to have an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second. You're not going to get water jet levels of pressure out of that. That's just not physically possible. I'm taking a drink. I know where this is going. I'm taking a drink. And I'll take a drink again when it's a confirmed prediction.
He said, oh, we cut it with water.
Mm-hmm.
Like 50,000 pounds per square inch or something, you know, but they squirt water on it real hard, and it cuts through the steel extremely smooth. Cut with water. It's not quite, yeah, it's probably 3/16. Pretty thick. Probably, what, 20 pounds maybe.
JDL2150 says, does Kent know about gravity? The thing is, he does know about gravity, but the problem with Kent is that he can know about something and then be completely incapable of actually making the connection mentally between that fact in isolation and some other fact in isolation, right? So Kent has in his brain the fact that gravity exists. He also has in his brain the fact that water can cut through steel when it moves. Therefore, water must be able to cut through rock when it moves, just like it cuts through steel. Under the power of gravity. But he's never going to, like, do the math or try to figure out if that's even plausible. He's going to be like, well, gravity exists and it moves water, and moving water can cut through steel. Okay, I guess then that moving water can cut through rock in a half a second, just like it cuts through steel. And he just, the idea that, like, there's necessary pressures and velocities and whatnot, it's going to go right past him. He's not even going to think about it. Because that's inconvenient. Terador's final form for 100 Argentinian pesos says, are my ears deceiving me? Did he say water or water instead of water? He did seem to say it somewhat normally, which actually makes me think that his water is like it's like an affected thing, like it's a thing that he tries to do for some reason, like for effect. And I don't know what the effect is supposed to be, but yeah.
No, Hexaw would take a while, wouldn't it? So rapidly moving water can just do an awful lot of damage. The other thing you get with rapidly moving water, it picks up a lot of debris. Pretty soon it's not just water anymore. Now it's a slurry of rocks, tree stumps, logs, boulders, and liquid sandpaper.
I wouldn't phrase it that way, but also, when you sandpaper things, do they get more smooth or less smooth?
More smooth.
So, would you expect liquid sandpaper erosion to smooth things out or leave things jagged with sharp angles?
Smooth things out.
All right, well, let's see if he gets the Grand Canyon, because I'm 70% sure that he's getting to the Grand Canyon.
So what they'll do when they drill a well, they will use drilling mud. Not just the drill bits drilling the well, the drilling mud is abrasive.
I have no idea if this is true or not. I don't really care. If you do know if this is true or not, if you have like a lot of well digging experience, let me know.
They mix special mixture called drilling mud that they pump down, and they try to get just the right weight, because you can add certain minerals to it and make your water heavier than if you had other minerals. So there's a real science to the drilling mud. You know, what are you going to put in this well? Because you got to have just the right pressure.
Terador's final form points out, at every stage the flood is as violent or as calm as we need it to explain any geological feature. Yeah, there is that. Also, Dutch T-Rex Tunicate says, water jets need abrasives for harder materials like steel. I don't know. I don't think I knew that. I think that sounds new to me. Neat. And it checks out. It makes sense. And then Lieutenant Math Navigator for $5 says, for comparison, 50,000 psi would be equivalent to water pressure at 3.5 times the maximum depth of the Challenger Deep. It's a lot of water pressure. Yeah, that's quite a lot. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Math is not his strong suit, which is another sign that you're probably dealing with a pseudoscience. If they're not willing to just do the math to figure out if their idea is in any way reasonable, you're probably dealing with a pseudoscience, right? Like, there's a reason that flat earthers can almost universally just not do math, right? That they just can't do math. You ask them, like, hey, if you have a triangle of side lengths 1, 1, and 1, what is the value of the internal angles of the triangle? I bet Bent knows.
Sorry, I was distracted.
Oh, Bent, if you have a triangle with side lengths of 1, 1, and 1, what is the value of the internal angles? Like, how many degrees are they?
180 degrees.
Each one individually.
Oh, 60.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll bet Bent also knows the answer to this one. Is 10 to the negative 17th a positive or a negative number?
Positive.
Yeah. You ask a Flurf, they get those wrong. I bet if we asked Kent, fair chance he'd get those wrong.
To go down, eat the rock away, and push the debris up through the hole. Because you got a drill bit, say this big, and a pipe this big, which you're pumping water down through. So while they're drilling, this drilling mud's going down and pushing everything up the outside.
Get to a point, Kent.
Because if you're drilling, the stuff's got to come up. And those are called the tailings. Who cares? Okay. Psalm 104, verse 8. They go up by the mountains. They go down by the valleys. Now this is an Old English phrase.
Take a drink, because it's not Old English. It's early modern English. Kent, I took a semester of Old English. I can guarantee you, you don't know what Old English is. You wouldn't recognize Old English as English.
And many Bibles right here will have a reference note at the bottom to explain what this means. This is not the way we would say it today in modern 21st century English.
Gee, I wonder if that's part of the reason why people might make a new English translation of the Bible, Kent. Kent also believes that you don't need anyone to help you successfully read the Bible. The Bible is clear enough, in the King James, by the way, that anyone who speaks English can just pick up the King James Version of the Bible, read it, and understand it. But apparently not. That's only true sometimes, even though Kent says it's true about the whole Bible. Kent, I don't know how to tell someone that they should be internally consistent with their ideas. Like, I don't know how to explain that to someone. The idea that that isn't just immediately obvious to everyone is something I don't know how to account for or how to fix, right? It's like everyone, like one time I had someone who I've known for a very long time. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds on what this was about, but it came down to, hey, explain to me why I should care about this. And it was like, I don't know how to explain to you that other people matter and that you should care about them. So I don't think I can. Like, I don't understand how I can explain to this person why it is that not being a self-centered prick is a good thing, and why you should care about the well-being of other humans, at least in general, at least enough to not cheer on their active harm. I just don't know how to do it. I don't know what I could possibly say that would take someone from just not fundamentally not caring about other people to caring. Similarly, I don't know how to fix this about Kent. Right? Like, I don't know what to do. How do I tell Kent, or anyone who is just reveling in an internally inconsistent worldview, or just a bunch of ideas that don't cohere together, that that's something they should care about? I don't know. I've tried, right? In fact, just recently, every once in a while I follow some creationist stuff on Facebook, because Facebook is a great place if you want absolute insanity. That includes creationism. Basically, one of the only things I do on Facebook is follow some creationists and see how insane they are. And they were completely incapable of actually engaging with any arguments at all. They just don't even try. They just call you an atheist. And that apparently is supposed to mean, I don't know, that you're wrong, I guess. That's it. And I don't know how to explain to any of these creationists, like, hey, someone making an argument against your idea, one, doesn't necessarily make them an atheist, and two, even if it did, that doesn't make them wrong. Like, maybe you should care about the points that you're making, or that this page is making. When someone says, hey, this isn't a good point for this reason, maybe if you disagree with that person, you should have a reason. I don't know how to tell people that. There are certain things about people that I don't know if there's a way to change. Those are some of them. Terrador's final form says, and I tied an onion to my belt, which was the fashion at the time. Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you. Grandpa Simpson, you are one of the best strike busters out there, even if you can't crack heads like you used to. All right, here we go.
They go up by the mountains, they go down by the valleys. The phrase that they have in the footnote at the bottom, the more modern way to say this is, the mountains rose, the valleys sank down.
Which is almost word for word what the NIV, his hated translation, says there. Which, I just love that. I just love that. I've taken a drink for it. The NIV is just like, yeah, okay, that's what we said. And Ken's like, no, not the NIV, they're adding things. Absolutely amazing.
So what apparently is happening here in Psalm 104, verse 8, the mountains are actually lifting up, and the valleys are actually sinking down. If we filled this room 5 feet deep in water, the whole building.
Okay, but remember how we actually read a good chunk of Psalm 104, and it turned out that it was actually more about the creation than it was about the flood? The rising up of the mountains is talking about God forming the land in the first place, which is one of Kent's big problems. He's using a psalm that's fundamentally not actually about the flood to talk about the flood because it's convenient for him. Which means technically Psalm 104 is a Trojan source. I'm taking a drink.
And picked up that end of the building with the forklift. What would happen to the water? Go this way, right? Until it runs into something it can't move. Well, if you lift up a section of the earth as big as the United States and tilt it, you don't have to tilt.
Not a thing that's ever happened, by the way. No section of the earth as big as the United States, by which I assume he means the continental United States. So for those of you who are American, that means just the 48 states that are like in the center of North America. It excludes Hawaii. It excludes Alaska, as well as all of the various island territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, stuff like that. So I assume that's what he's talking about. If he also actually means plus Hawaii and Alaska, or just Alaska, right? Because Alaska is already like half the size of the rest of the United States. Then there's certainly, as far as I can tell, no evidence of anything that big having been lifted up and tilted. But there also isn't any evidence of anything as big as the continental United States. Kent Long Halstead of Nantucket for $4.99 says Kent wouldn't know an internally consistent epistemology even if it divorced him 4 times. Oh, I was not expecting it to go there, and damn, that's good. That's a good burn. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, I had 2 theology professors in college. One knew Koine Greek and Biblical Hebrew. The other thought older Bibles were more accurate because they were older. The second one didn't like me too much. Did he mean older Bibles, like as in Bible translations, or like older manuscripts? Because I could see a preference for older manuscripts. All right, and we only need 2 more super chats, and we have 11 minutes. I think we could do it. We can meet the super chat goal.
Tilt it very far. Tilt it 100 feet in 2,000 miles. That's all it takes. The water's going to start running. Water seeks the lowest level, period. The crust... There were already some mountains and valleys. Well, the Bible doesn't mention mountains. It mentions hills, high hills. But then during the flood, it says the mountains were covered.
So there were mountains then, Kent.
So a lot of people think most of the mountain ranges were formed during the flood.
There's no indication of that in the Bible. The only reason people think that is, once again, because otherwise they have trouble accounting for why there's not enough water to actually do that. The most straightforward interpretation of that section of the Bible is just that there were mountains and they got covered. Right? Because at no point does it say, and the waters covered the mountains which did not previously exist, but which formed during the flood. It doesn't say anything like that. It just says, yeah, there were mountains and they got covered. The only reasonable interpretation there is that there were already mountains. Sorry.
Because of numerous different factors. For one thing, if you had water under the crust of the earth,
which is physically impossible for any significant period of time, on an order of like days or weeks, not like years. So this is not a thing that happened. Unless, of course, you want to say that impossible things are just fine. At which point, why are you trying to say that this is scientific, right? This is actually one of the things I was discussing with those creationists on Facebook. Also, Olivia Williams says, who's been a member for 36 months and is at the Tetrapod level, says, offering a drink with a Ghidorah. Well, thank you very much. I will take a drink for that. So, this person was trying to say that the Book of Enoch is not, like, historically accurate. Which, yeah, I agree. It's not historically accurate. The Book of Enoch is Genesis fan fiction. But the problem is that his argument was like, the Book of Enoch says that humans were 400, or the Nephilim, sorry, were 450 feet tall, but that's impossible. Okay, yeah. Okay, right, cool. But you're a Genesis literalist who thinks it's all historical, and snakes and donkeys talking isn't any more impossible than 450-foot tall humans. And also this person happens to think that Adam and Eve were 15 foot tall, which is also just as impossible as 450 feet tall. Right? Like, you're well past the point where you can't make it to adulthood without having your heart just fail on you. So, like, that's not possible either. So, if impossible contents means that Enoch is fake and didn't happen, there's no way to say that that doesn't also mean that for Genesis. You have to come up with a different way to distinguish Enoch from Genesis, other than that one contains impossible things. Literally, no one has addressed that point yet. Out of 58 comments in that thread, just from me, not a single creation has ever addressed this. I can't talk. It just hasn't happened. Why? Because one of the things I really want to drive home tonight is that creationists are not people who can operate with intellectual integrity. If you have intellectual integrity and you're a creationist, we're going to stop being a creationist. The degree to which you have intellectual integrity is the degree to which you stop being a creationist. This is how it is. Sorry, Peter, if you're out there, right? Either of the Peters. I don't dislike you guys, but you're both young Earth creationists when that is fundamentally physically impossible. And so don't have a way to do that while also maintaining intellectual integrity. The closest I've ever seen anyone come is Todd Wood, who says, yeah, I don't have any evidence, but I think it's true anyway, and I'm going to try and find the evidence. Which, like, at least you admit the state of the evidence, which is that there really isn't any.
that is jetting to the surface. Once all this water shoots to the surface, it collapses. The rock collapses like a sinkhole, only.
I mean, that probably would happen, but, you know, that's just hydroplate theory. And if you thought the heat problem was bad from catastrophic plate tectonics, which is the AIG model, the model that AIG themselves said would produce enough heat to vaporize the oceans of the Earth several times over and melt the granite crust of the Earth, that's at least a few orders of magnitude less of a heat problem than hydroplate theory had. So, sure, if you want to have a whole bunch of water jetting into the sky, go for it, but the Earth is going to become a ball of plasma under this idea. In fact, Walt Brown, the guy who created it, has said as much. He says, yeah, I know that this is impossible and requires miracles, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with miracles because I'm a Christian. Which is like, okay, cool, but you can't call it scientific at that point. If it requires a miracle, you've left science, because science doesn't have a way to assess miracles, because they're not the kinds of things that operate according to natural principles. By definition. Definitionally, a miracle is when some supernatural agent comes in and causes a change in the world that is not something that can be accounted for by natural processes. And since science... There's Godzilla. Since science doesn't really have a way to study things that don't operate according to natural principles because they're not open to empiricism, science can't really study them. So, yeah. I'm drinking for Godzilla. Alright.
A big one. But it's not going to sink evenly. It may sink and wrinkle up like a raisin.
Okay, but Kent, there would be evidence of that kind of folding, like subsidence and overthrusting and whatnot. Do you have such a thing? Do you have a location that you think has been overthrust and wrinkled as a result of subsidence after some kind of crazy flood? I mean, I don't know. Joshua Geese for $5 says one more left, which is true, and we only have 4 3/4 minutes. So can we do it? And I think we can. I think someone can send in one super chat that's $5 or above, and we'll get the super chat goal. I believe in y'all.
As sections as big as Texas collapse, it may collapse unevenly, causing rolling hills. All sorts of features can be formed in that one-year flood. If you're willing to understand what's going on,
But that's the problem. Geologists are willing to understand what's going on. The way I know is because they've identified gigantic flood features on Earth. They've identified volcanic eruptions on Earth. They've identified meteorite impacts on Earth. Geologists aren't like, oh, no, can't have any kind of flooding or volcanoes or catastrophes. They're not doing that. They're perfectly open to catastrophic explanations. Now, that was not always the case, to be fair. And then John Hopkins for $5 says, did I help? Finally finishing off the super chat goal. Thank you very much. You, in fact, have met the super chat goal, and I am, in fact, grateful. Thank you very much, everybody. We did it. Specifically, John Hopkins did it. All right. And as another reminder, I don't think we really have a whole lot of time to get all the way up to Dapper Gazette Tutu again. But if you did want to get there, the most cost-effective way would be donating on the GoFundMe, which is linked in the pinned chat, because that place gets you a 20% bonus on any super chats, or not super chats, donations. So if you donate $100, that is actually like donating $120. And then Lieutenant Math Navigator for $5 says that Earth was wrinkled in much the same way that Kent's brain isn't. Kent has koala brain. Confirmed. But did you know that koalas don't have wrinkles on their brains? They're just completely smooth-brained. Nope. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They're incredibly dumb. Incredibly dumb. I think I've said this before. But so the only thing that they eat is eucalyptus leaves, right? If you give them a pile of eucalyptus leaves, they'll sit there and starve because they don't recognize it as food unless it's on a branch. Because they're dumb.
Oh.
They are some of the
animals.
dumbest animals in existence. They're adorable, and they can also rip your face off. But like, so dumb, so dumb. Also, the only way they can digest eucalyptus leaves is certain bacteria that live in their guts, but they're born without those bacteria. And the way they get that bacteria is by eating their mom's poop.
Yay!
Yay for koalas. Also, so many of them have, what is it, like, syphilis? A whole bunch of them have some, like, human disease. I think it's syphilis. Ridiculous. Or maybe it's, yeah, I think it's syphilis. Ridiculous. Koalas are just one of the silliest animals. If anything was going to be a defeater for creationism, it should be the koalas. No loving God would create such a crazy animal. I like the unsubcutaneous Kennedy saying, "Leave the koalas alone." I'm not telling any lies about the koalas.
Water from underneath is coming to the surface, going to end up on top. Some of it's going to stay trapped and is still there.
Oh yeah, and John Hopkins pointed out also all the syphilis. So it was syphilis. Yeah, a huge portion of koalas are just have syphilis. They just do, which is even know what to say. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $5 says, "I just want to point out that koalas are probably smarter than sauropods." Yeah, there's a pretty good chance. Yeah, I that's a good point. They probably are, or were, or would be. I don't know what tense to use. Guys in the chat, tell me what verb form I should use. But
Some of the water is going to be shooting sideways under this crust, between this basalt and crust of overlying rock.
yeah, forget about the granite parts of the crust, though. Those don't matter. That's just where the people live. Who cares?
If it's leaving over here, from here it's shooting this way, causing earthquakes, just the water moving. Lots of strange things can happen in this type of scenario. But it's very interesting. When they study the thickness of the Earth's crust, and of course they've never drilled through it. Nobody's ever drilled through the crust of the Earth.
Oh, I guess it was chlamydia. Yeah, it was chlamydia. Whatever. It's one of the things that you normally get from practicing unsafe sex. So, hey, if you're out there, 1, don't have sex with a koala. 2, practice safe sex anyway. Unless you're a koala, in which case, yeah, sure, go have sex with a koala. I suppose that's how koalas do it. Unless they're asexual. I doubt it. I don't think there are any asexual mammals. That would be weird. They're asexual reptiles.
The deepest hole they ever drilled was Project Moho. If you look on the far left,
What about the Kola Super Deep Borehole, Kent? Pretty sure that was the deepest one.
over there you can see Moho, M-O-H-O, named after some guy named Moho Ravisic. I'd have picked somebody else to name it after, but
I'm going to take a drink and we're going to talk about why it's named Moho Ravisic. Okay. It's named that because of what's called the Moho discontinuity, which is a change in how seismic waves transfer through the mantle of the Earth, well, the crust of the Earth, sorry, at a certain depth, right? At a certain depth, you get to what's called the Moho discontinuity. And I don't remember the exact details of exactly how the transmission of seismic waves changes at that point, but it does significantly. And it's like pretty consistent depth around the world. So this is called the Moho discontinuity. And originally it was thought that this would be because there was a different composition of the crust under the ground. It turns out that it's actually more about the pressure and temperature there, and that it reaches some critical point that changes the properties of how the rock conducts seismic waves at that point. And we know that because people basically drilled to it. And so that discontinuity is named after this Moho guy because he discovered it. That's why. That's why it's named that. He discovered it. I'm sorry that Kent doesn't like his name, probably because Kent's a bit of a racist, which we absolutely know he's actually a flaming racist. But, I don't know what to tell you, Kent. That's just how it goes. Remember that time that Kent had it was a Native American woman on his show, and he asked her how many people she'd scalped?
That's not good.
No, it's not. Yeah. So, Kent's a pile of crap.
he said there has to be a place where the crust turns to liquid. It's hotter and hotter. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets. Eventually, you get deep enough, the rock is going to melt.
So, no, I'm another drink. The moho was not really thought to be a change in the state of matter of the rock. We know that the rock at the mantle is essentially solid, except on the longest of time frames, right? At which point it is kind of fluidish. It's a very, very, very high viscosity, like many orders of magnitude more viscous than like honey, right? So calling it a liquid is a bit iffy. If you picked up a piece of mantle rock and held it, assuming you didn't burn yourself, which, I don't know, maybe you've got like an asbestos glove or something, or like an aerogel glove, I don't know. It would be solid, right? You could shatter it. It wouldn't deform if you pressed on it. It wouldn't flow through around your hand. It wouldn't like melt. It's essentially solid on any reasonable human timescale. Now, the outer core is liquid, and we know that. But the moho discontinuity is in the crust, so it's not going to be liquid. It was, again, thought to be a difference in the composition of the rocks. Turns out that's wrong. But that was the original idea. It was just a difference in the composition.
At some point, it changes from solid to liquid. That point is called the moho-revisic discontinuity.
It's crashing. That's fun.
It's 30 miles thick. It's a different type of rock or different density, is what this textbook says. I had in California, no, where was I? Yes, in California.
All right, so Bent, here's what we're going to do. I want you to write down 5109. Because that's where we're going to try to pick up next time. All right, so I want to say that I appreciate Eric there giving some pushback, right? Because Eric has noted that the thicker continental crust is in fact lighter, which according to Kent should mean that it should be thinner, I guess, because heaviness means thinness, because I don't know. But it's directly contradictory to what Kent said. And Eric's just like, hey, this doesn't check out. And so I think at this point, maybe Eric still had a spark of critical thinking. Obviously, he's pretty much lost that. He's not even trying anymore. Now he's just selling literal poison as a fake cancer cure. And fake cancer preventative. Pro tip, if you have cancer, you should go to a doctor and follow actual, well-researched, evidence-based medical advice, and not just eat random seeds that are going to poison you. See a doctor, not a freaking pseudoscientist. But it is interesting to see little tiny sparks of what could have been a critical thinking Eric Hovind who rejected all of his dad's nonsense. But I think the money was just too attractive. Do you realize that when Kent went to prison and made Eric the trustee of all of creation science evangelism, how much easy money that was for Eric? He basically had a scam evangelical ministry that was pretty much on autopilot. All he had to do was just keep acting like his dad to the degree that it wasn't going to put him in jail. And he was just printing money. That's it. He was just printing money. Now, is he going to become fabulously wealthy like a Jeff Bezos or something? No. But is he going to have a nice, cushy life and never have to really worry about financial stability? He just keeps up with the grift? Yeah, that's what he did. And I don't know that I would have done something different. I would like to believe that I would. But I'll say this. The past, I don't know, the past 6 months or so have really taught me that a lot of people who think they would act in a certain way when, faced with a big moral dilemma or something like that, they just won't. Yeah. And I don't know that I would be any different. And I know that most people who say, oh, I wouldn't do that, I would take the moral high ground. Most of them are lying. Or not lying, that's not true. Most of them are incorrect. And when actually faced with a tough choice like that, hey, go into financial uncertainty, abandon what you know, get rid of this easy cash. Or even things like, I don't know, oppose the rise of fascism forcefully. Most people just won't, even though they think they would. And very few things have driven that home to me like the last few months. So I don't know that I would do that. So I guess I can't completely blame Eric, but it's still the wrong thing to do. I'm still not going to pretend it's not. Okay, we got a couple of things. Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for $5 says, according to a cursory Google, koalas, famously dumb animals, have an encephalization quotient of around 0.5. Sauropods were rocking a whole 0.2. Oof. Sauropods. Terrador's final form for 200 Argentinian pesos says, I keep thinking the Moho discontinuity is named after Moho Hoho, pronounced in Spanish, yeah, Moho Hoho, which leads me to realize Moho Hoho sounds like how chimps talk. Also, I love that Kent doesn't know how to say discontinuity. That was another fun thing that we just discovered there. So that was interesting. That's just a regular word, Kent. You could just learn how to say it. It's discontinuity. It's not that hard. But all right, thank you guys so much. Ben, do you have anything you want to say to people as we get out of here? As I also update the counter.
No, not really.
You sounded very despondent when you said that.
I'm
No,
sorry.
not really.
I'm sorry.
Are you Eeyore today?
A little bit,
Are you missing your tail because it fell off because it's just put on there with a tack?
maybe.
All right. Well, let's take a look at what is coming up on this channel. So tomorrow at 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to be starting a streaming special. I don't know, what have I called it? I'll double check right now. I'm calling it Birds Are Still Dinosaurs Part 2 PC fundraiser, which is going to be the final push for this fundraiser. Now, when I say final push, I don't mean to get to a sufficient number. I want to be honest with you guys. I can already get an extremely nice PC with it. However, I want to give it one more go. Basically, I don't have a better excuse now. I just want to give it one more go. And that is going to be tomorrow. Doc Dino is going to be there, just like he was for the first one that we had last month, which was a membership drive that time. But this time, we're just going to watch that video and push people to both subscribe to Doc Dino, as well as donate to the PC fund and whatnot. I'm also inviting Chesh and Vishanti, again like last time. They will be getting links to join. And so that will be fun. At least I hope it will. I mean, it will also be painful because we're going to have to listen to Gabriella Haynes tell us how birds are totally not dinosaurs, you guys, without ever actually giving us a reason why birds aren't dinosaurs. At least not one that actually makes any sense. So yeah, come hang out for that. That should be fun. That's tomorrow, again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Then on Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be premiering Noah's Mountain Lobsters, in which Timothy Cleary, one of the ICR guys, is going to talk to us about how ecological zonation actually explains the fossil record. And that's why aquatic things are found at the bottom of the fossil record and terrestrial things are found at the top and whatnot. Of course, the problem there is that aquatic things are also found at the top. So were those high elevation alpine lobsters there that are found at the top of the fossil record? I don't know. I guess so. Then on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, assuming everything is okay and we don't have any reason to not play, which we might, the plan is to play Entropy's Demise, which is Season 1, Episode 6 of Star Trek Enterprise, over on Top Hats Off. That should involve Maddie, Chesh, Jordan, Craig McNeil, Necro, Jordan, I think I already said Jordan, I don't know. Zerolon and Tiri Rana. Actually, no, Jordan won't be there today, or tomorrow. Friday, words, jeez. Jordan won't be there, but everyone else will be, assuming that we actually play. If not, it's because of something I'm about to tell you guys about the next thing. So then on Saturday, the plan is to have another Dapper Reacts, where we will continue reading Bodhi Hodge's Babel book, which is just unbelievably poorly written and unbelievably poorly researched and unbelievably poorly reasoned. It is an absolute dumpster fire of a book. I would be completely and utterly ashamed to be associated with that book. Then on Tuesday, we are actually doing Kent with Bent. Now, this is because Maddie is going to have a minor but painful medical thing going on there. That's all I'll say, is that Maddie won't be there for medical reasons. But that she is not in any significant danger. So like we don't have to like, oh, is Maddie going to be okay? The chances are that she will be very okay. And by the chances are, I mean like well over 90% chances that she will be just fine, but not able to make it for Tuesday, which means that instead we're going to be doing a Kent with Bent. Now, if you guys can get us 200% while I'm still yapping about this, then I'll have to wear this tutu again. But as it stands right now, it looks like Bent is going to be. So there you go. That is it for today. If you are interested, we're going to be watching 4 episodes of Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel? Super Ninja Steel. I don't know, whatever. The Super whole naming convention was dumb anyway. But yeah, we're going to be watching 4 episodes of that over in the channel. So yeah. Science Side Up says, listen, I might be high on pain meds and in chat. That's fun. And yeah, she'll be fine. I did actually kind of forget you were here, Patty. Sorry. So yeah. With that though, I'm gonna get out of here. Once again, I really appreciate all the support. You guys have been absolutely amazing. And I tell people all the time, I have just such an amazing audience. I love you guys. So thank you very much. Do remember, if you do want to give outside of the streams, that's fine too. I will be very appreciative of any money that comes in between the streams, and I do plan on ending the fundraiser basically when I get around to it after the stream tomorrow. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to things like that, so it might linger around for a little while afterwards, even into the next day. But the plan is to close it down. So with that, we're going to get out of here. So hey, stay safe out there, and I hope to see all of you tomorrow.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Ferrevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Elleron Teller, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostig von Mennen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, and Volus. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.